successful. I look for and find opportunities where others see nothing. I am a lifetime learner. I am solution focused. I see only solutions. I am a solution. All right. Welcome to the Be Transformed podcast. I'm the catalyst and my name is Lanre Olusola. And this is your go-to space for very practical, mind-transforming conversations that empower you to overcome all of life's biggest challenges. This is where transformation meets truth and purpose ignites destiny. Today, we're talking about harnessing the power of executive presence and personal branding, moving from the invisible to being an influencer. I'm very excited to have Ifeoma Williams, a luminary with 21-year legacy in strategic communications, global business development, executive coaching, and gender-centric strategies as my guest today. Ifeoma has consulted for giants like MTV, NCC, Pencom, Nickelodeon, and the list goes on and on. She's a visionary. She's a transformer. She's a coach for organizations and top-tier executives and global thought leaders. With her audacious Transform Her initiative, she empowers women to ascend to leadership pinnacles, setting the gold standard for strategic communications and influence in this VUCA 21st century. She was trained and certified by both the Wharton RSD Institution and Marshall Goldsmith, the world's preeminent leadership thinker. Ifeoma is a beacon of innovation, an alumna of two very, very prominent and premier Nigerian law firms, Aluko and Oyebode, Stratton and Partners, where she practiced as a very, very professional, high-level lawyer. She was very instrumental in pioneering personal branding in Nigeria, and I'll come to that, in a bit. She had a very, very illustrious certification from London's Aston and Hayes Image Consultancy. She has helped redefine the brand narratives for industry titans like Mo Abudu and Deola Sego. And in essence, Ifeoma Williams is a quintessential local beacon in the 21st century. She is, well known for strategic communication, branding, culture, influence. She is so diverse, and I'm so excited that Ifeoma is our guest this day, and you're going to really learn a lot from her. Welcome to my podcast, Ifeoma.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you so much for having me. As you know, or you might not know, I can't write my story in image consulting, in transitioning from law, without you having at least 2 chapters in that book.
Wow. I am so humbled and I am absolutely honored. I've seen your evolution, in the last 2 decades, and, it's been simply incredible. And, for people out there that see you and see the great work that you've done, but they do not know the history. They do not know how you started, where you started from, how it was when you were about to create this industry in Nigeria, where nobody wanted to go into it. People were doing fashion, but there was no real substance and image consulting, executive presence, and personal branding in Nigeria then. So tell me, how was it transitioning from being a professional like a lawyer? Our fathers then would send us to school to go and do engineering, law, architecture, medicine. So you studied law, and you did very, very well. And then you evolved from a lawyer to an image consulting, an industry where there was nothing happening there. How was it for you? What were the fundamental principles that you took into consideration? And, what were your secrets of success?
Well, you're one of my secrets. Now an open secret. Yes. So I start with that. And I don't say that lightly, to say that I had guidance. I had a coach Even the world's greatest coaches need coaches. So at the time where coaching was new, there were not that many coaches. I was just blessed and lucky to know the catalyst, and he helped actually hone and define my path, because there was a lot of deep introspection from the questions you asked me from our first few sessions. What exactly is this? What do you want to be known for? You made me. I remember one or two sessions I was thinking, questions these coaches, I've answered now. I don't know. It's a deep reflection. So what that
Wow.
did was that, with the theory or the certification I now had, and then you went a step further. You introduced me to two of my early clients. One of them became my biggest clients at the time. You introduced me to Auntie Betty Rabo. I became fashion editor of Genevieve magazine. You introduced me to Auntie Mo Abudu. I became her stylist on Moments with Mo.
Yeah.
I say I can't tell those are two clear chapters. But going back to law, in my final year of legal practice, I became a people watcher. What I was doing was watching people. I think I told you the story before of how I looked at a lawyer one day. I said, "Why does this man look like he's been attacked by a hyena? What's this wig?" And
Wow.
I realized there was a whole industry on helping people put their best foot forward. Even I, at the time, didn't realize the silent but great impact that presence has on you. Because at the time, executive presence wasn't really a thing. It was all image, 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 and that has now evolved. And so, a classmate of mine, who Omoyemi Akerele, introduced me to Aston and Hayes. She had been there. And so I went and did the course, came back, and thanks to my coach, got my first few clients. And again, it was in the delivery of service that it began to make sense.
Mm.
So you can get all the certification, but don't forget that coming to a place like Nigeria is special, it's unique, and it's different. And at the time, a lot of people was image consulting, But the people who bought into it.
Yeah.
And it began to grow. Today, the fashion styling industry and that's just a minuscule part of image consulting, you see, because image consulting is A, B, C, D, E. It's
Wow.
appearance, it's behavior and body language, it's communication, it's digital presence, and of course, evolution. So
Wow.
it's vast.
Wow. A, B, C, D, E. So let's get into the meat of this conversation today.
Sure. Yeah.
We're talking executive presence, we're talking personal branding, and they're all elements of image consulting.
Yes.
Right now, so from your experience and your definition, having practiced in Nigeria and across the world, actually, what exactly is executive presence, and what exactly is personal branding, and what is the difference or the commonality between both of them?
Okay, thank you for that, Coach. I like to start these sort of conversations by, sort of giving a broader perspective. In a world where perception often precedes performance, right? The person who commands the room doesn't always have the loudest voice, but that person has the clearest and most unmistakable presence, right? So it's about the power of becoming unflappable without saying a word. And I want us to start with the lower hanging fruit that's more, shall we say, familiar. Most people are familiar with, and that's personal branding. Coach, I'd like for us to clarify the concept, right? Let's reclaim it from the noise. The word brand is now ubiquitous. And a personal brand is not a logo, it's not your Instagram bio, and it's definitely not a Snapchat filter.
Oh my God.
Your personal brand is the emotional aftertaste you leave in the room.
Mm.
How people remember you when you are no longer physically present. It's the culmination of the clarity of your identity, the consistency of your values, and the confidence of your message, all visibly aligned. Now, don't forget that the reason why you and I are even having this conversation is because it matters, right? And
Yeah.
why does it matter? It matters because people Google you today, before they meet you. Your brand always walks into a room long before your body does. Branding transcends self-promotion. It is strategic self-awareness. And don't forget, why do they call it a brand? And I tell this story often and often. You know, in days of old, when people owned chattel, say oxen, all of these things, how did they differentiate theirs from the next person's own? It was by hot iron, branded in the body of the animal. And so that was some sort of visual identity. But what happens? Why is that visual identity important? It's because somebody looks at it and commits it to memory. It's the same way the silver apple with a bite reminds you of innovative technology. It's the same way if you see cursive red and white stripes, you are thinking Coca-Cola. In fact, when you see those stripes and you see Coke, songs from their adverts come to your mind and your mouth actually begins to you actually want a cold Coke. That is the power.
Right now, we are talking about it.
I'm telling you. You see, a powerful brand is the ability to deliver on a promise consistently.
Wow.
Now, if you now look at executive presence, right? Executive presence is the X factor in leadership. It is the ability, right? Project confidence, clarity, and credibility, even in silence. It is that aura that you project, says to the people in the room that this person is in charge or deserves to be in charge. So, whether it is the people who say that executive presence is made up of 3 pillars, character, substance, and style, or whether it is the people who say it is gravitas, communication, and appearance, there's an underlying factor. It is about how you act, how you speak, how you show up. And you see, this notion that it is elitist or inaccessible is wrong. Executive presence is intentional energy that wields appropriate influence. You can't fake it. Executive presence is not character, or rather charisma. It's character that is refined, rehearsed, and radiated. Executive presence is the difference between being heard and being heeded. So when a person hears you, they might hear you because you are in a position of authority. But when a person heeds or is voluntarily influenced by you, it is because you've wielded that influence because of that executive presence that you've projected.
My God.
Yes.
Wow.
So that is executive presence in a nutshell.
Wow. So it's about the perception that you create, and that perception precedes every single impression that you are going to create. It's that unforgettable memory, that unforgettable experience, that unforgettable imprint.
Yes.
It's about clarity,
Mhm.
clarity of image, clarity of identity, clarity of essence.
Yeah.
It's about your strategic. It's about how you reveal your strategic awareness of self, of purpose.
Yes.
It's about your promise of value.
Yes.
It's about your promise of solutions. It's about the X factor.
Yes.
Credibility, integrity, panache, style, character, substance,
Yes.
gravitas, and how you now package all of that and communicate it, whether in silence, whether with body language, whether with what you wear, whether with how you talk, and all of that.
Yes.
In fact, what you are saying is that executive presence and personal branding is the cocoa. It's everything. Wow.
See, executive presence is grace under fire. Can I tell you what? Wow. Somebody who wields executive presence has intentional application of energy.
My God.
You see, I would rather a 50,000 naira on firm, confident shoulders that projects somebody I can believe in or trust than a $10,000 suit on somebody who appears shifty, unsure, is communicating different things at different times. Coach, a lot of people, their LinkedIn bio is different from when you engage them in real life.
My God. My God.
So it's about being intentional. And remember, I said it is rehearsed. It is refined before it is radiated.
My God.
There's certain questions you need to ask yourself. Who are you without your title? And that takes us back to the basics, which oftentimes we ignore. What are your values? You know, people say, I can never tire of speaking of these things so that, people learn or people go back and think about it. Let's take the value of integrity, for instance. So many people, one of my values is integrity. Okay. To the average Nigerian or person, integrity is simply the absence of fraud. I've not been to EFCC. I've not been called for stealing money. So I have integrity. But do you keep to time? Is your word your bond? Do you say what you will do, what you say you will do, even when people are not looking? Are you true to yourself? Are you disciplined? Do you meet deadlines? Are you punctual as a person? All of these things show integrity. Let's take excellence, for instance. There are people who say, you know what, nobody is perfect, so nearly there is okay. No. Whilst I believe that practice makes improvement, you can always walk towards getting better. Nobody's ever going to be perfect, really. No human being is infallible. But these are the things when we're speaking about values and about alignment. Because if we say that executive presence is wielding influence from rehearsed and refined, approach, which now radiates, it means that very intentionally, there must be clarity in your game. You must ask yourself, like I said, who am I without my title? What values do I consistently live by, even when no one is watching? What's my one-line legacy?
Oh.
Why should people remember me? What do they remember me for?
This is really deep, Ifeoma, because people will think, oh yeah, it's about how you dress, it's about wearing this shoe, it's about the colors, it's about but you're talking about the essence of someone's existence. You're talking about intentionality, you're talking about purposeful living, you're talking about integrity as it pertains to spirit, soul, body, expression, communication. You're talking about everything that pertains to your existence. You're talking about the fragrance that you release, the energy that you dissipate. You're talking about having a very high believability quotient. Let's even leave integrity on. That is, you show up.
Yep.
And people buy you. People accept you. People embrace you.
To have a conversation with you because you get it.
Wow.
The first step, when I say, get clear on your identity, one of the things you must do is you have to audit your energy. When I hear people say appearance, what is appearance? You can have on the best outfits, but your energy is low to kill the outfits.
Ooh.
Part of appearance is energy quotient. How do you show up? How do people feel in your presence?
My God.
Maya Angelou said something. She said, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you do or did. People will never forget how you make them feel. Executive presence, you have to radiate it, and it comes from within. And you can decide to act, right? Maybe you've practiced for a particular speech or something, but guess what? You can fool some of the people some of the time. All of the people some of the time, but not all of the people all of the time.
My God.
If it is an act, you will slip one day.
Nah, they will be found out.
Exactly. So it can start out being an act. But what you want to do is that audit, the values audit, the energy audit, and then the clarity thinking. Who am I? Whether I have this title or not, is it going to change who people say I am? Is it this title that gives me confidence because I'm in this role, I'm in this position? Is that what gives me confidence? Minus this title, stripped of it, am I still that same person? If I leave office tomorrow, are people going to call me because of the impact I had on them as a leader? Or was it just the office? A position of authority is not leadership, is not executive presence. So when we are talking about presence, two things come to mind. Is the intentional energy that you wield that takes you from being heard, as I said, to being heeded, right? And the second thing is combining all of those things so that you project it. An alignment, right? So if you look at gravitas, for instance, how you act. If you look at communication, how you communicate. And then my favorite one, and I'm so happy you spoke about it more than, once, coach, is appearance. Appearance is more than apparel. It's a combination of apparel and energy. And of course, my favorite definition of style, which is very key for executive presence. Style is not just appearance. It's the conveyance of an aura of distinction that might be hard to define, but is very easy to recognize. You just see someone, you say, there's something about this man. There's something about this. I can't place my finger on it, but there's just something different. This person is, then you hear people start saying, he has charisma. He's confident. I'm comfortable around this person. I believe in this person. This person is real. He's real. He's not acting. People feel it when you are real. They know.
God, my God. You are looking. We're talking about substance. We're talking about significance. We're talking about, energy.
Yes.
Even, one of the things that blows my mind the most, one of the people that blew my mind the most is Solomon got this. King Solomon, brother Solo, he got this. They said from afar, they were hearing of his.
No, Solomon he was the forebear of executive presence, without a shadow of a doubt.
That guy, bad guy, man.
Shadow of a doubt, And the beauty of this is that it can be learned. So in the world we operate today, it's left for everyone who is interested, that is, to look at your sphere of influence or the industry in which you operate and say, you know what, I want to embark on an audit, right? If you want to move from invisible to influential, right? How am I going to harness this power? You got to get clear on your identity. You have to craft your own narrative. You have to audit your energy. And then you have to build visual and verbal consistency. So if the visual, the Instagram, the LinkedIn, all the different platforms say one thing, but the voice speaks another thing, there's no consistency. And then when you've done all of this, you want to maintain top of mind awareness to the audience that you are preaching to. Memorability is not loud. Nobody is saying that you should come and be loud. So if we're talking about speaking, for instance, speak with a pause, but ensure that there's clarity and there's conviction. Dress with intention. Intention is not extravagance. Listen with full presence, not performance. Be present as a leader. Be interested. Care. Empathy. Work on your emotional intelligence. You see, executive presence is way beyond appearance.
Wow, 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 wow,
In your space. That's
wow.
what executive presence is. It's an aura. It's a presence. It's beyond the suit.
No wonder, no wonder. No wonder God says that a good name
Yes.
is better than silver and gold. And you define it, in your visuals, what people perceive you to be. Jesus asked them, "Who do men say that I am?" That's a perception, visual.
Yes.
Then verbal is how they articulate their perception about you. And then the energetic form, the spiritual form, all of those things have to be consistent. There has to be alignment. Now, it seems like many great achievers, many wealthy, rich people struggle with this thing that we're talking about. And so, many of them are invisible. So why do some of these very talented, skillful, intelligent professionals remain invisible? And what are the implications of a lack of visibility? And how can executive presence and personal branding change that for them?
Okay. So, the implications of being invisible is that you become relegated. You become irrelevant. What good is a diamond nobody can see? Coach, you and I know that there are some excellent coaches who no one knows about. The best coaches are not necessarily the most visible, but the known coaches are the coaches who are more visible. And if you are in the business of coaching and you are hidden, I'm at a loss. I'm a bit confused because it's about impact, isn't it? It's about influence. It's about growth. So if you're not visible, then I'm not quite sure, because are you living purpose? And whatever field you belong to in the world today, whether it is spiritual, whether it is secular, as they call it, whatever field it is that you belong to, understand something. He has sent you here to be a fisher of men, to connect, to impact, to go into the marketplace. So even if when I say spiritual or secular, what I mean is, if it is that you're not a pastor, and even pastors, even in the spiritual field, realm, space, and all of that, I won't use the word industry. It's not an industry. Visibility. We saw what happened with Streams of Joy from COVID-19 time to where it is at today. And don't forget something. As human beings, God made us for connection. Isolation is a bad thing. So let's now take that, right, into our different spheres as individuals. He sent you here with and for purpose. It is about sharing it correctly. It's about your visibility being done properly. Some people are visible for the wrong things. Some people's unique selling proposition is shamelessness. And it's selling them name withheld, names withheld. I mean, the internet is replete with those sort of characters. But I believe the audience for this podcast, or of this podcast, are people who want to be able to put their best foot forward and influence appropriately and positively and make impact globally. And we're now blessed with the World Wide Web. There's no such thing as global again, it's local. The lines are blurred. With the internet, Coach, you and I are on this podcast. People are going to see it in the far-flung ends of the earth. That's the beauty of the internet. You see, you can't say to me today, oh, I don't have certain degrees. And if you have YouTube, if you add data and you have YouTube, you are a graduate, whatever graduate means in today's terms. Because the 21st century, leader or person who knows is the person who is willing to learn, unlearn, and relearn. So, to answer your question and to just sort of streamline, first off is People who have problem with visibility are not being intentional in taking out the time to craft their narrative, determine what platform they want to connect with their decided audience on, and be consistent with it. So that's the difference, in my opinion.
Wow, awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, I love this conversation because honestly, from as we're talking, scriptures were just dropping. And this is for our religious and spiritual viewers out there.
Yes.
Everything that Ifeoma said, right, is about visibility and lack of visibility. The consequences of it is anchored in these scriptures. Let your light so shine before men that they will see your good work and glorify your Father in heaven.
I love
So
this. Tell me what scripture that is.
yes. The highest form of worship is when you have owned your skills, when you have created alignment between purpose, personal branding and creating a good legacy for yourself. And you are excellently, solving problems and the world sees and the world experiences your light. That will elicit a reaction that I call the wow effect. All they will be doing is wow, wow. That wow is
Yes,
that wow is working.
yeah. You see, and oftentimes people are a little, people are a little emotional. And what I advise people is let it be emotional plus actionable. The world does not give you what you deserve, it gives you what you declare. Your presence is your platform, even before your PowerPoint presentation.
My God, my God, my God.
If you want to be influential, you have to start by becoming intentional, right? Because even in boardrooms, whether you're on stage or in the shadows, the silent advantage will always belong to those who are branded with clarity and who walk in presence.
Powerful. This is powerful.
It's not about being ubiquitous. You are on Instagram, you are doing video. Before you do that, that is important, but before you do that, is the brand clear? Is there clarity? Do you know what your brand is? Do you know what it is, the value you bring is? And are you ready to deliver it consistently? You see, personal branding is not vanity. It is visibility with a discerned voice.
Wow.
Executive presence turns quiet leaders into commanding ones. The strongest brands are not necessarily loud, they are consistent. So much as I say, stop blending in, because the truth is, if you are intentional, if you are consistent, if you are true, and if you are aligned, right, the world is simply waiting to remember you.
My God. My God. And as you are just talking, scriptures are just dropping. This says that, the whole world is groaning. They're on tiptoes, eagerly awaiting your manifestation. It says that you are the light of the world. It says that you are the salt of the earth. It says that you are a city that is set on a hill. Man, my head is busting. As you were speaking, I just heard like you are a messenger with a message, and you have a mandate and a mantle. And it's your responsibility how you deliver that message, the medium with which you deliver that message, and your messaging. And this is what we're talking about. Look, guys, if you are hearing us today, we're saying that there's a responsibility you have, right? There's a responsibility in the likeness of the way that God presents himself. God doesn't just carry himself anywhere. God doesn't just go anywhere. God doesn't just present himself anywhere. Before God shows up, you would have felt he's showing up. Oh my God. When God shows up, you will feel his presence. When God leaves, his presence remains. You are created in the image and in the likeness of God. Before you show up, let your let your let perception, let it precede you. When you show up, let your presence be present. And when you
Your
leave your
presence.
presence behind. Oh yes,
That's
let your presence be present.
right.
After you've left, leave your presence behind.
Yes.
Let them begin to feel the energy of your essence and let them want more. Let them desire more.
Yep.
You know, that is what we call significance. You cannot chase it.
Mm-mm.
You cannot aspire for significance. Significance is a reward. Mm. Significance is a gift, is an outcome of when all these things that we are talking about, when they align. Now I'm sure people are listening and they say, well, okay, this thing sounds really great. This thing, I believe. So now that I believe, right? And there's so many distractions out there. Please let me ask Madam Ifeoma to give us 3 practical steps that we must take today to build a very powerful and compelling personal brand and executive presence. So give us three very practical first steps that people can take. And then later on, for the more advanced, they have to come and reach out and say, okay, coach, Coach Ifeoma, Catalyst, how can you help us? We're at this level as executives, this is what separates one executive from the other. This is why they will choose out of 3 executives that have the same technical skills, that have the same emotional intelligence, that have the same career trajectory. That's why they will choose one to be CEO over the other. And so this thing that we're talking about is why they have bypassed many intelligent, skillful, very knowledgeable people. This reason, this topic that we're talking about is why you wonder, why did they choose that guy over me? After all, my IQ is higher. That guy is very, very intentional. That guy has built it. And the beauty about executive presence and personal branding is it takes time. It takes time. So if from our three very practical first steps
Yeah.
that you can take to build a compelling personal brand and executive presence.
Okay. Before I even tell you about those 3 practical steps, I'm going to do those 3 practical steps in 3 places and 3 persons. Before I tell you about those 3 steps, I want to tell you the story of a lady. About 6 or 7 years ago, I worked with her. Then we worked together again about 3 years ago. The last 18 months of our working together, she was promoted 3 times. First class brain, first class graduate, Ivy League MBA, sharp mind, but in every boardroom, she melted into invisibility. She didn't speak up. When she did, her voice wavered. She dressed like she was apologizing for being. Fast forward to intentional coaching. What happened? We coached on presence, we coached on vocal tone, we coached on narrative positioning, we coached on visual identity. Look, she didn't just walk into rooms anymore, she led them. She today is the head of strategy of a multinational. Coach, what happened? Same brain, same degrees, different presence.
My God.
Intentionality had changed the game. Intentionality had changed the game. Now, let's go to 3 points. I said I'll do it in 3 persons and 3 parts. So let's take the catalyst, for instance. There's the catalyst at home and with his work team and all that. There's the catalyst online. And there's the catalyst when he goes to speaking engagements and engage clients and all. There's personal, there's work, right? And engaging with your audience. and there's digital presence. The first question is, am I aligned across these three places?
My God, my God, my God.
When people see me, and a coach can probably vouch for someone like me, if I attempt to act, I'll fall sick. What you see in videos, once the catalyst described me as complication. He said, no, you're not complicated, you're complication, like a Swiss watch movement. It's ongoing. What you see on LinkedIn is what you're going to see on Instagram, is what you're going to see when I'm giving a real life talk, or when I'm coaching, or when I'm teaching or training. It's what you're going to see with my staff. But where a lot of people get misaligned and confused and project a strong brand is that who they are in the office is different from who they are in their Insta. And so if you continue like that, you are confusing yourself. When you get confused, questions start to go off in your mind. Who am I even? What am I? Look, clarity is the starting point. You got to be clear. And across all of the platforms. Are you there, coach? We seem a little frozen.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, super.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. So we looked at three parts. We looked at three persons. And we said the first thing is that we want to audit. So the first thing is we want to audit all platforms and everything. In auditing, right, you don't have to do it on your own. You can ask people's opinions. How do I come across? Where do I need to tweak? And then audit also begs the question, who really am I? What am I about? What exactly am I trying to project? So the first step is audit. The second step, it now becomes definition. Remember that we said it's about refining, rehearsing, and then radiating. So those are your three steps. Refining is where we audit and we define, right? And then we rehearse, meaning over time, I begin to own it. I begin to live it. Now, this is not about acting. This is about improvement. There's a book I read about a year and a half ago. I read it again this year, and I'm going to read it again. It's called Atomic Habits. It's the power of So, look, you are not going to become a size 2 in one day. You can decide on the quick route of Ozempic and Monjaro. But the truth of the matter is that discipline builds character. Discipline builds character. If you don't stay the course, look, my pastor says something and it's so true. The weight of the light of glory can blind you if you're not prepared for it. If you are not prepared for the light that comes being thrust to limelight or glory, the weight of glory, it's called the weight of glory. It can crush you. So to yourself be true. Don't deceive yourself. Identify in your audit, identify what your flaws are. In your audit also, start with the end in mind. That's another favorite, principle I like from the 7 habits of highly effective people. Start with the end in mind and walk backwards. How do we do that? Say, for instance, if my role model is the catalyst, Dr. Lanre Olusola, what will I do? I will start with that end in mind and say, this is a picture of Lanre Olusola. These are the things I admire about him. These are my own personal attributes. These are the ways in which I want to work towards being like this man. These are his habits that I like. These are my own personal. So you clearly define using a role model as a picture, or even putting yourself as the end picture and then walking backwards and saying, these are the steps I need to take. You can read autobiographies on people you admire and glean from their lives. Sometimes you don't even need to reinvent the wheel. Your particular life circumstances might be on all fours, might not be, but there are things you will gain. So the most important thing is the audit. So the 3 steps, coach, is that we refine. In refining,
Refine.
yes, in refining, we're auditing, we're defining, we're getting clarity on what exactly this brand is. The next step is we rehearse. We are intentional about cultivating a certain type of energy. So refining, the refining era is where we are developing the personal brand, because we need to define the personal brand before we project it with executive presence. Then the rehearsing area is where we look at gravitas, the way we act, communication, more verbal, the way we speak, and appearance, the energy we bring and the apparel we wear. So this now is the rehearsal stage of things. And then the radiating stage is where we are projecting. So we refine, we rehearse, and then we radiate.
And we radiate. Wow. Very powerful. Very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. You know, look, many people have tried many things. Many people, have stumbled. Many people have failed in many things. From your experience, what would be the top 3 personal brand and executive presence killers that get in the way of the accomplishments of top executives and top performers? So, top 3 branding and executive presence killers that get in the way of the accomplishment, the performance and the reputation of top executives.
Number 1 is poor communication skills. Number 2 is low emotional intelligence quotient. And number 3 is the wrong energy.
Wow.
Don't forget that all of these things, you can unpack them into so many things. You see, but when you
Wrong communication, wrong emotional intelligence, wrong energy.
That's right. You see, as a leader, understand something. The true meaning of joy, well, we say as a Christian leader, right? The true meaning of joy is Jesus first, yourself last, and others in between. JOY.
Wow. Jesus, others, and you.
That's right. That's joy. As a leader, you have to put people before yourself. How do they feel? How do you make them feel? You see, emotional intelligence does not mean condoning nonsense. No. But it means being patient enough to hear people out.
Wow.
Talk about poor communication skills. One of the things a lot of leaders, and coach, you know this, one of the poorest communication skills a lot of, let me not call them leaders, a lot of people in leadership positions have is that they hear because they have the physical human ability, 2 ears that are functional, and so they receive sound. A lot of leaders hear, but they don't listen. They are not active listeners. They don't process what it is they are being told. And then they don't now sum it up with emotional intelligence to say, look, each person is who they are by accident of birth and what the vicissitudes of life have visited on them. Are you patient enough to look at things from all angles? Or do you see the world just from your own lens and that's it? When people, listen, communication is not the ability to pass information. It is how the information is received and understood. A lot of leaders are suffering in the area of poor communication. Now, if you look at what I just said, when I said you should unpack all 3, the next thing now becomes emotional intelligence. If you are a great communicator, you are because you've added emotional intelligence. So these things are not independent of each other. And then the final thing is the energy. So if somebody is misbehaving, for instance, but the person is a star or usually a star performer, right? Instead of wielding the baton and saying, take nonsense from anybody, if you're starting communication lines, Lanre, you know, I really admire the way you write and all of that, but in terms of delivery, I find that we've been late lately. Is there a way we can? You started out telling the guy you are my star, but that in this other area we're suffering. How do you think we can make it? You did not even mention that what is all this late submission of the, you know what I mean? Now, I'm not saying that leaders should take on the added burden of every other person's emotional issues, but we are human beings and not human beings. Uneasy is the head that lies the crown. You must be concerned about people's baggage. You don't know what's causing the problem. Now, easier said than done, right? But the truth is, three leadership killers, these things. You're a poor communicator. Emotional intelligence quotient is, and it's under the guise of, I've done this for 30 years and I've been where you are. These are just excuses. These are just excuses. I was once like you. No, Nigeria was is now when you were doing it 30 years ago. Mental health was not heightened that many years ago. It's not the same thing. You can't compare. The
Times have changed.
dollar was not 1 to 1.6.
Wow.
Everything the dynamics have changed.
So you need to change. You as a leader need to change. Wow, wow. This is deep. This is deep.
It's
It's really, really deep. Let me ask you one final question because I would love for us to keep going. You know how it is. These are conversations and we need to touch base soon.
for sure.
These are conversations. We just go on and on and on and on. And this is so, so, so critical and so important. We live in a digital social media age,
Yes.
where social and digital media, has dominated our lives.
Yes.
How do we use online presence and social media to contribute to, creating executive presence? How do we use it wrong and it destroys our executive presence? What platforms or strategies should serious professionals focus on? What should they be doing on those platforms and what shouldn't they be doing on those platforms? Let's just use this to wrap up this conversation.
Okay. So there's no such thing as what platforms are serious. Every platform is a potential destroyer or builder. It just needs to go viral. You cannot be an executive on LinkedIn projecting a certain image, wanting to mentor a certain kind of group, wielding a particular kind of impressive influence, and then you say, oh, on Instagram, I just let my hair down. No, you can be yourself within reason. But you can't send conflicting messages. Yes, you can let your hair down within reason, but you can't make people wonder, okay, well, I like this fun side of this person, but this is a bit much. Oh, this one is much. Give you an example. On LinkedIn, I have some videos where I'm talking about all of these things that we're talking about now. And then on Instagram, I'm hanging with the girls on the weekend and I decide on a bit too much red wine. And then I'm slurring a little bit and all. And I say, it was just a night out. No, that's a bit too much. And sometimes people feel, hey, I'm just going to be me. In the office, I'm like this. But when I'm out, you are sending a conflicting message. Do you know why? Even though LinkedIn is the serious platform, the recruiters or the people who are seeking keynote speakers will leave LinkedIn and say, let me look for her elsewhere. And it could just be that 1 minute that says, "Ugh, maybe LinkedIn was an act." This is why, remember, when you asked me about 3 strategies, I told you they're in 3 parts. It's your private self at home, it's your office self, and it's your online self. You really can't separate. That is why you want to clearly define your message and then rehearse. And how do you rehearse? By instilling discipline. How do you instill this discipline? Follow the principle in Atomic Habits. Just one minute a day, 5 minutes a day, and then remain consistent. Remember, it takes us back to the beginning. Branding, consistency, consistently delivering on a brand promise, a value. You're known for a particular value. You are intentional about it, and then it follows you through. What happens? You become trustworthy. And when people trust you, what are you able to do easier? Influence them. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Thank you very much, Ifeoma. Thank you for your wealth of wisdom. Thank you for, sharing, from your heart with passion. Listeners out there, your brand is not what you post. Your brand is what people think about you. Your brand is what people feel about you. Your brand is what people say about you when you are not in the room with them, when you don't have the opportunity to explain yourself. Your brand is the perception that people have of you, and that perception determines their perception of your value and their perception of your status. It also determines how they relate with you, how they value you, and how they value your product, your service, and your solution. So, ladies and gentlemen, the first thing that people buy is you.
Yep.
If you've sold yourself wrongly, then whatever product, service, or solution you're buying is out the window. Look, guys, we're talking spiritual, we're talking psychological, we're talking social, we're talking relational, we're talking professional. Let your light so shine before men. A good name is better than silver and gold. You are the light of the world, you are the salt of the earth, you are a city that is set on a hill. Now, who will light a lamp and put it under a bushel?
Exactly.
It makes no sense, right? You have invested so much in your life. You've invested so much in your personal growth. You've invested so much in your career, and all of a sudden, when it's time for you to be chosen and selected, nobody selects you and nobody chooses you. That's not where you want to be. You want to be chosen. You want to be the preferred. You want to be that one that is selected amongst your peers. There's a lot of work for you to do. So if you want to do this work, just reach out to Ifeoma, reach out to myself. Ifeoma, how can they find you on social media?
So my LinkedIn and my Instagram are both Ifeoma Williams. For coaching, people who are interested in executive presence coaching and all of that and programs we have, pop me a message on LinkedIn. I'm more active on LinkedIn than I am on Instagram, but I will see your Instagram message. But LinkedIn usually is the best place for me.
Fantastic. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's your time to rise, and it's your time to transition from the invisible to become the influential.
Yep.
If this conversation has been of any benefit to you, make sure you share it on my podcast. Just share my podcast, share it on every platform, and don't be the only beneficiary. You have a wonderful day. God bless you.
Thank you, Coach.
I am successful. I look for and find opportunities where others see nothing. I am a lifetime learner. I am solution focused. I see only solutions. I am a solution.